Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We organize Hits Meet to bring some of the latest thoughts and the way different organizations are solving some hard pressing problems. Here, we are happy to have Samrat and Ronak. They are part of the team called Nova Vente. They are solving some of the B2B sales approaches that people have to take. And today, they have come out with the topic prospecting in the new normal. Very happy to have them present some ideas on this, and I really look forward to you guys taking the maximum advantage of this. Thank you so much, guys. And Samrat and Ronak, please take the mic.
Hello, very good afternoon. Thank you, Sandeep. Thanks a lot for inviting us for this. So, as the topic is about prospecting in the new normal, I'll maybe spend some 30 seconds on what the new normal is about. The new normal tends to get associated everything with COVID and everything, but this is not the new normal we're talking about. For me, the new normal as a sales leader began some 7, 8 years back with the advent of a lot of social media platforms and a lot of options, and the way selling was being done, that changed forever. And that is the new normal we are adhering to. And that is on the basis of which we started our organization, which does B2B sales for technology companies. Okay, so the next 60 minutes, what we're going to do, we are not going to teach you prospecting or, because there are enough, material out there, enough trainers out there and everything. We are just going to touch upon those practical aspects which are missed out by many sales leaders when they set up their prospecting teams. Even large companies, right from the top tier companies to the smaller startups and all, go wrong on certain things, parameters of prospecting, where some practical aspects are missed out. So we are just going to get to the basic definition of prospecting. We're going to start from there, and then we are going through. There are some 15 points I've made where I feel there has to be a different level of thinking that is to get in by the sales leadership when it comes to prospecting. And if that approach is applied, you will look at prospecting from a very different angle, and you will appreciate and you will see the results from there. Let's understand, let's really accept it. It's not easy. Prospecting is one of the most difficult aspects of sales. Many sales leaders, as much as 70 to 80% as per various surveys, feel that prospecting is the most difficult aspect of selling, even before closures, sales closures or negotiations and everything. Salespeople or sales leaders are very adept at those aspects of it. Prospecting is a different science and it requires a different mindset and everything. And that's where, we see a lot of challenges. So just to let you know, some figures I've quoted here based on certain surveys and researches has been done on prospecting. It takes minimum 18 calls to get even a connect with a prospect. So just imagine how much challenging it is, and how much frustrating it is, and why people give up very easily before they are able to reach a particular prospect. Less than 20% of the emails that are sent by you to your prospects are open. And when I say 20%, whether you send it via some tools or whether you send it one-on-one, that is a typical ratio, 20 to 30%. If you get 30%, it's a pretty good ratio is considered if you're doing mass mailing and all. Otherwise, if you're doing one-on-one, it can be slightly higher. But average is around 20%, especially in a offering that's on the technology space or anything like that. Just imagine, put yourself in a buyer's position. How many emails do you get in your Gmail and other IDs, and how many of them you really end up opening? 80% of the sales require at least 5 follow-ups. As in, that is when to at least initiate, to convert that prospect into a lead, it takes that many minimum number of follow-ups to get that. So you're talking about 18 calls to get to a connect and maybe 5 follow-ups after that to actually initiate, convert that prospect into a proper opportunity or a lead. So that is the kind of effort that goes behind creating every opportunity. Now, 20% of emails that are opened, they get skimmed within the next 2 to 10 seconds. Now, just imagine, how much are you going to spend time in doing that? You may create a proper mail, talk about the customer's pain points, you talk about different industry figures and all, but you are getting only 2 to 10 seconds of that person's time. And most of that is always on the mobile, to grab that attention, to get that prospect to respond to you. So yes, let's agree and let's be honest about it. It's not an easy thing to do. However, what is made difficult because this leadership of sales leadership, I find them too ignorant sometimes because they are stuck in the past. They're stuck in the old ways of doing things, and they don't really have not geared up to the new normal, which began say 7 to 10 years back. And what is that? Let's understand a few things, and this is something which every sales leader needs to learn. 95% of the B2B buyers research online before buying. So no matter what you're selling, whether you're selling an HR software or you're selling a banking software or you're selling shoes, everybody does a research online. If you're not getting into that, then you're already starting with you're starting on the back foot over there. So that is one aspect that many sales leaders completely miss out on. 91% of the buyers prefer engaging during the awareness stage. Now, awareness stage is when people are just exploring something, not even explore it, it's awareness. I'm just aware that there is a particular product which I may or may not need, but that is the awareness stage. And people prefer being engaged at that time, even before, when they're not even decided, even if they have started exploring. And that is the stage, if you can get into the buyer's mind, you've actually done a lot of the hard work or made your job much easier. And this is the number of people who prefer a reference. 84% of the buyers actually prefer a reference that when you're approaching. Moment you approach somebody with a reference, or doesn't have to be an existing customer or whatever, the chances are that you have made your job much simpler. 56% greater chance to success with sellers contact the before the buyers do. So basically, most of the time we see salespeople being very happy once they've got an incoming inquiry or something. And that something is that really you need to think hard whether you really want to approach that particular opportunity. Because in most cases, the decision has been already made and they're just exploring other options to maybe get competitive quotes or something like that. So buyers prefer, sellers contact them before. And although they may try to not really entertain you at most of the calls when you make those cold calls, but they still prefer being contacted at that point in time. And of course, most of the buyers prefer to engage a seller that contacts first because that remains the top of mind. So timing is absolutely essential. The way you approach, that is why prospecting is an ongoing process, and there are no success failures based on whether a lead is generated or not over there. Okay. Now let us spend some time understanding what prospecting is. The sketch you see here is about the California gold rush. People are prospecting for gold over there in the sketch, as you see. Now, we all know the success ratios in this was so low that most people didn't end up making anything. But some people who got lucky or did use smart techniques became rich in the gold rush. Okay. So what are they doing here? They're basically looking at gold wherever they could. I mean, that is exactly what happened in that era of the gold rush in the west side of the US. So prospect as a definition is to search an area for gold, minerals, oil. So before prospecting was used as a term in the sales science, that was the standard definition of prospect as such. And that is what even the Oxford Dictionary mentions. Now, why is this important? Because that has a connotation as to how people look at prospecting from that perspective. Because people do look at prospecting like go after anything where there could be an opportunity without really looking at the science or the focus or the segmentation and targeting, and that is where most of the effort goes on. So let us understand for a few things what prospecting is not. And this is where a lot of sales leaders make mistakes. Prospecting is not lead generation. Most of the organizations have something called as a lead generation team. They're also called inside sales team. They're also called prospecting teams. And that is where the mix-up happens. There is no clarity on what that team's role is supposed to be. So prospecting is not lead generation. Let's have that very clear in the mind. It is also not an opportunity creation. Lead generation and opportunity creation are two totally different things, and prospecting comes much before that, and it's definitely not sales. Prospecting is purely an opportunity to generate a lead. So you have prospecting, then you get leads. From the leads, you create your opportunities, and from the opportunity, you create sales. So prospecting is purely an opportunity for an organization to generate a lead for its offerings. There is a simple 2-point test which can define whether a particular activity that you're doing, I mean, it's a prospect or not. And the 2-point test is the company right? That is the company that you're trying to prospect into. Is the person who is working over there, is he or she a decision maker, an influencer, gatekeeper, or a user, or anything else within that particular, the various personas which we define in sales? If these two tests are made, then you are definitely right track as far as the prospecting is concerned. It's not necessarily lead generation, but it's definitely right from a prospecting point of view. So what has really changed in the past few years that has made prospecting really difficult? First of all, the advent of new channels. When I began my career in sales, around that was in 2001, 2002 time period, we had the phone, we had a directory, there was no LinkedIn at that time, and we used to call, and that made it not, I wouldn't say it was easy by any chance, but that is all that was there. And whoever made smart efforts got success. But now so many channels have come up. Let's go back to the first statistic I put up, that most of the buyers do online research before they even start thinking of approaching your potential suppliers. New channels like LinkedIn is there, Facebook is there, Insta is there. And even if you're in the B2B space, Facebook and Insta do matter, because don't forget your buyers are also individuals who are actually on various social media. So the number of new channels that have come up have drastically increased in the past few years, especially in the last decade or so. Stringent laws. Most of us are aware of the GDPR, but apart from GDPR, there are many other laws which have come across the world, which has made prospecting very difficult in terms of approaching people through emails, phone calls, or any other means. And if you go wrong over there, that would lead to a lot of problems. You might get banned by the organization. They can file a complaint against you. They can file suits against you. So those things have made really life difficult for sales and prospecting people. Third, the buying behaviors have changed drastically. There used to be very standard processes across organizations of 10, 15 years ago. Standard processes, and most companies knew about the buying processes and the behaviors they had. The advent of the online channels and various other things which have come have made that buying behavior very difficult and unpredictable. Next is multiple options. The number of vendors have increased. Many young startups are actually challenging the big guys. So it's become difficult even for large organizations to carry out prospecting the way it used to do. So you have a top tier company and a mid tier company and a small tier company offering exactly the same. They have their own strengths and weaknesses. But unless you are able to position those strengths and weaknesses in the right possible way, you are not able to get that kind of message across, and you're not able to get that kind of converted prospect into a lead. Today's approach is more of inside out. People do not go by what is available in the market. Buyers go by what they want. They become demanding. There is more demand for customized solutions. There is more demand for the perfect thing that they want with the mix. They are not going to settle for anything that is being offered or available in the market. Last but not the least, the differentiation comes from the multiple options which is there. Differentiating has become indeed very difficult. Large companies are facing this challenge when they compete with the lights in their sector. At the same time, they face challenge from the early startups and all who are offering much better solutions. And again, so differentiation becomes back to it that your solution has to be different and relevant. It is not just good to be different. That differentiation has to be relevant to that particular industry you're selling to. Okay, so what happens? Your person who is in inside sales slash prospecting slash sales, as it is being called, calls up somebody, and that person has no need for our services, so he's not a prospect. And this is where the mistakes actually begin. You identify a person, you call that person, and he says that he is not needing your services, and we say that he's not a prospect, and this is where things go wrong. He has no need for our services now, so he's not a lead, but he's still a prospect. Come back to the 2-point test that we discussed earlier. As long as the company is right, and as long as that person is a user or a decision maker, a buyer or an influencer, he or she is indeed a prospect. He may not be a lead now, but he is indeed a prospect. That brings us to the next point, which is, and here is where the 15 lessons that we have gathered through our practical expertise are going to come up, is prospects are immortal. whereas leads and opportunities die. So if a person is in the right position within a company and the company is right for you, the prospects will be immortal for you no matter what. That company might cease to be going out of your leads funnel, opportunities funnel, sales funnel, but as a prospector, it's an immortal account contact that you have to nurture through as long as you are in business, because you never know when things might change. Now comes to the interesting point about, and this is my second point here. We call B2B, we ourselves say we are a B2B sales specialist. Then there are B2B versus B2C. The market is divided between either, offerings either B2B or B2C. But when it comes to selling, when it comes to prospecting, you have to understand that the difference is not that simple. It is not about B2B and B2C. Commercially, it could be so, but it's B2I. It is business to individuals. They may not buy it as consumers, but they might buy it as a business. But finally, you are selling to individuals within an organization. We look at an organization and look at an organization as an entity. We look at an organization as something that we study about and then go back with the research and try to approach that particular company with our offering. We forget that you have to appeal to those individuals, those whom you are selling to. Typically, it is said that in a fairly like mid-sized organization, for any enterprise level sales, there are 7 to 8 people who will get involved in the buying decision. You have to look at the individual needs of that individual 7 people. The rest of the organization doesn't matter, and those individual behaviors really matter more than anything else. Of course, these are all most of the time aligned with the organization, but organizational needs, but not always. Even if the organization needs and the individual needs are aligned, there is a lot of science and a lot of complexity and dynamics about what could be the individual requirement of that person as far as the buying decision is concerned. Now, we all come across buyer personas. Most of the sales processes and the sales study starts with a buyer persona. You define a buyer persona when you make your product, when you start selling in the market. You define a buyer with the demographics, the pain points, common objections, interests, and everything, and could be anything from you. Today's the changes that have happened in the past 10 years, the way the sales cycle has changed, the options that have come in, you have to move beyond buyer personas. The buyer personas, the traditional definitions do not work anymore. If you look at it, today there are multiple personas within an organization. And this is a point that flows from the B2B, B2C versus B2I, which is the reality. You have to appeal to every individual persona that is there within the organization, where the dynamics will be different, the needs will be different, the wants will be different. There is a user persona. Let's say you are selling a software which automates your HR processes. There is a user persona of the person who is actually going to use the HR software on day-to-day basis. Could be a manager or people below that. So these are the user persona is going to have a different persona. Their needs are going to be different. Their wants are going to be different. There is a gatekeeper persona, people who will let you go inside or not get you inside, will decide. They may not have really a role in the buying process as such, but the gatekeepers are going to be your key people who are going to either, they're going to decide if they have a different persona. Their requirements might be vastly different from what the organization wants, or even the user or the buyer wants. Then, of course, there's a decision maker persona. In this case of an HR software, we are talking about the head of HR as a key decision maker, although a COO might also come in. And even for a mid-sized company, even the MD or a CEO might also come in over there. Then there is a budget holder person, a person who is actually going to write the check. May not be the HR head, but could be the CEO or somebody. And these are the people who definitely matter when it comes to, and you have to appeal and create personas of individual people. What is the gatekeeper wanting? Maybe gatekeeper is looking for a recommendation for something, or gatekeeper is just looking for something which is beyond professional things. I mean, in terms of it's something which is basically might be looking for a job. You never know. Those are the things which really matter a lot when it comes to enterprise selling. And the key persona that most people miss out is the insider persona. That can either be any of the 4 personas that we have defined, or could be a totally different person who is going to be your guide in that particular account and has a different, very insider persona. The likes, dislikes, and the motivations of an insider person are vastly different from a user or a gatekeeper or a decision maker or budget holder. These people have very different requirements from what the insider persona is. And the insider persona is going to be you're going to be a guide in the account who is going to guide you through the process, is going to find out, help you there, or can even stop you somewhere. The next point is about our sales process. How many times within the sales organizations you hear about things that this is our sales process, we follow that. The thing is, we have to move from that now, because the traditional sales processes followed by organizations do not hold true anymore. That has changed. People cannot be, sales leaders cannot be very, very rigid about their sales process. That era is gone. It is the buyer's buying process that has to be understood, and you have to modify your process accordingly. The buyer's buying process is going to vary from industry, from sector, from the different business sizes they are into, and even every company will have a different buying process. You have to understand as to what your top 10 prospects need, and you have to modify your sales process accordingly. Sales process rigidity is one of the key reasons why most people, sales teams, are not able to meet their targets. And that is, there needs to be some kind of buying process understanding before you define your sales process as such. The next is that prospecting is a very different skill set from sales. A sales leader is supposed to be efficient in many things, selling, negotiating, and various other things, understanding the business pain, need, and everything. Prospecting is a very different science. Prospecting requires a lot more patience. Prospecting requires a lot more perseverance. Prospecting requires a lot more success, different success criteria, and we'll come to that. It is a different skill set that comes from sales. It's basically something which you keep around and wait and keep doing it, and you never know when that will come. A salesperson looks at success and failure from a very different way from a prospector should be, and that is how it should be. And that is where the mistake happens, when prospectors and salespeople and inside sales all are combined and we look at it in the same way. If you need to get your hiring right, you need to have a separate team from prospecting with different motivations, different challenges, different KRAs over there. You have to train them differently. Salespeople look at opportunities from a 0-1 scenario. Smart salespeople choose their opportunities for the quarter. They choose as to how much effort they are going to put after every prospect, every lead or opportunity. Prospectors have to be trained differently, because as I mentioned it earlier, prospects don't die. They are immortal. Leads and opportunities die. So for a salesperson, it's very different. From a prospector, it's very different. Prospector has to think of every prospect as a possible opportunity to convert to a lead. And that is how they have to be trained to nurture those prospects even after those guys leave the organization. Even after your prospect has left the organization, you look after them as to where they have gone and nurture them, find the next person who is coming. That's a very different thing from a sales perspective. Salespeople may look at a 3 to 6 month kind of a scenario, because that is many die-hard sales are going to cut through sales organization. That is the way they are. Actually, you are as good as your last quarter. So they think differently, whereas here you have to look at it very differently. Evaluating them different. This is where many sales leaders go wrong. They look at prospectors as people who will generate leads for them or generate opportunities for them. So if they say that, I'm talking to so and so of this organization, they will tell you that, there is nothing that's happening over there, so it's not you're not doing a good job. That is not the way to evaluate your prospectors. Prospectors have to be evaluated about the number of new connections that they have brought in, even if they have not spoken to them, but maybe connected on LinkedIn or sent on mails, number of follow-ups they have done, and number of the quality of follow-ups they are doing. Prospectors cannot be evaluated on the basis of the number of new sales opportunities created. That is the evaluation of a sales leader, salesperson. The salesperson has a job to convert a prospect into a lead and an opportunity. But the thing is, prospectors have to continuously look after, maybe send something every 3 weeks or whatever that time frame is. Have you shared an update on your LinkedIn? Have you shared a new newsletter that has come in? Those are the things that prospectors should be evaluated upon. They can't get you leads. They can only garner interest. But that's the first layer that you have to start with. If your prospecting gets right, if you look at it from a long-term perspective, your problem of leads and sales will be solved. Hunting groups, and this is where we see a lot of things going wrong. You will see that in most cases, Every prospect, and let's say an inside sales team as it is called, which we don't call it, we call it the prospecting team, they will be given certain sectors, and those sectors, everybody will be given maybe sectors or a region, and they will hunt. Somebody will be hunting in UK, somebody in Germany. Well, it doesn't work that way. Ideally, a team of say 3 or 4 people would be given joint targets. We have seen it many times. A person A from the team tries to connect with the prospect. The prospect doesn't respond maybe for 5 calls, 6 calls, whatever, or emails or LinkedIn. Another person does the same. He or she is able to get it. Now, does it mean that he or she was doing something different from the person B was doing something different from person A? Not necessarily. There was something different. Maybe person B was from the same um, uh, uh, B school or some engineering school that they had been together, or they could see some kind of a connect over there. That is where look at it as an individual. Stop looking at it purely as a company or B2B kind of thing. That is why you have to hunt as teams. So there should be not individual but group targets as a team target, that you are able to crack so many prospects and bring them to lead stage over a period of time. That is how we have to track and manage those prospecting teams. So team-based targeting is something that is extremely important, and that is a changing one of the important things that have changed in the past few years. No one size fits all. People are measured with respect to the number of leads and all, and that is where it goes wrong. So many times there is a pressure on the number of emails sent. There's a pressure on the number of phone calls are made, and that is why a script is given, and that is where the common kind of a message goes up to all prospects, and that is where it goes wrong. Whether it's from not just from a company perspective, but from a buyer and a user perspective. If you are selling an HR software and when you're calling the HR manager, you are going to talk about the ease of use, because HR manager is not going to be too worried about the budgets and those kind of things. HR manager is going to be worried about how easy it is to use, how difficult it will be for me to train my people to use it. Whereas the budget holder is going to think of the finances over there. The security person is going to worry about the security and compliance issues that come out. The technology person is going to worry about integration with their ERPs. So that is where your messaging has to change, not just from a company to company, but from the individual personas that we had defined earlier. Referrals. In the initial slides, I showed you about how 85 to 90% of the people prefer referrals to come in, and the 85% chance that they will respond to that. Use that referral. Now, referral doesn't have to be your existing customer. Referral doesn't mean you have to tell your existing customer to ask you to give a reference. A referral could be anything. A referral could be as simple as that. It could be that, yeah, we studied together in this particular school, so I thought I'll connect with you and maybe tell you what I do. That is also a referral. The people do associate each other with their backgrounds, with their regions, with their schools that they have studied, or even earlier organizations that have worked for. It is the most underutilized asset. And we can show you that when you look at reference, everybody, with every prospect there is indeed a referral. Maybe somewhere they have worked past or something, you can always, and referral is not about, people are shy about going to their customers and asking for reference. Most people don't. And there is another stat which I haven't shared with you yet, but 70% of the customers are willing to give reference, but very few salespeople really ask for it. But I'm telling you, don't even need to ask your customers. You need to refer through certain individual groups, associations that have been there. Internal network, never underestimate the value of this. Now, we did a study with some large IT company that we were working for. Now, if you look at the sales teams that they had, people who have worked with various organizations in the past with some 20, 30 years experience, if you look at their network that they have, the internal network, it's vastly underutilized. So if I'm a salesperson targeting the telecom industry for a particular large company or a small company, I might be surprised that I may not be connected with the top 20 CIOs in the industry. But if I put together the 10 other people who work at senior roles in my organizations, they would be connected to that. And many people do not, most organizations do not utilize their internal network because they're not incentivized to be. because they work in silos. There are many cases where I've seen in large companies that the team that's selling into telco may not even know the team that's selling into banking, whereas the case might be that the buyers might be somebody in the banking, might have known somebody who works in telco, may not be the top leader somewhere, but through somebody there would be some kind of connect. And it's a hugely underestimated, underutilized thing, the internal network of an organization. So as we say, when it comes to selling, sell yourself internally to your organization as an individual salesperson or a prospector, and also use it for selling it to their customers. If you look at a top tier IT company, if you start from the board members itself, they would be connected to, I mean, almost 50 to 100 top decision makers in the industry, but nobody goes to them to ask for a reference or ask for a. It has to be used. Now, I'm taking an example of board member, but that same will be true if you come down to the manager or senior manager or an executive vice president level. Next point is about collaterals and conversations. We talk of collaterals, we talk of scripts, we train people on scripts, but we don't train them to handle conversations. People look at mock calls, people ask them to talk about it, but we haven't seen people being trained to handle conversations. And that is where the training comes in, and training has to be there. A salesperson is much easier to train because the salesperson can start with the presentation, can talk about the offering and get into a discussion. But a prospector who is calling from the cold needs to get into that art of conversation and go beyond his collaterals, because let me tell you, the collaterals that you work on, you engage some external agencies to prepare some outstanding collaterals for your marketing department. Most of them are never seen actually. People don't look at collateral, they believe in conversations, and the collaterals come later. So collaterals do not sell, conversations do. Now we look at, we've been taught this, that as prospectors, you should look at identifying problems for a particular company. Now that has moved, because going back to the selling, which is B2I, it is not for a company. Solve the individual problem. If you are able to do that, you are finally going to solve the problem for the company, and you will get those people. Again, going back to those buyer persona, user problem, the decision maker problem, the budget holder problem, or a gatekeeper problem, or even an influencer problem. Everybody is going to have an individual problem, and that is the thing that you need to understand and solve that individual problem, and you will be able to sell to that entire company. Let's go back and understand that any mid-sized organization, there are 7 to 10 people who get involved in the buying decision. And that is how, if you are able to identify the problem of those individuals, you'll be able to conclude a sale over there. Don't say you are an expert, demonstrate it. Demonstrate it. It ties down to, again, going back to the conversations as to how you are going to converse with that person and try to show that you are an expert over there. People talk of their organizations, people talk of how big they are, people talk of their corporate size and those kind of things. People fail to demonstrate their expertise in handling those situations. They fail to demonstrate that they are an expert when they talk to potential buyers. Some statistics which lie in the fact that people do not follow. Business is in the follow-ups. Persistency is the key. Look at this, just outstanding statistics. 80% of the sales are made on the 5th to the 12th contact. 48% of the salespeople never follow up with a prospect. So this is a kind of minimum people leave after 3 to 4 contacts. People get tired and they say, we're not going ahead, we're not going to, it's not converting, it's a waste of time. Persistency pays, and that is why you need to have a separate prospecting team from your sales team, and only then you will succeed. That's in a nutshell. Thank you very much. We are open to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Samrat.